And we are live. And welcome everybody who's joined maybe a little earlier. But we'll go ahead and get started because we are, in fact, at the top of the hour. So, welcome again. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on your time zone. My name is Eli. I'm VP of Sales here at Elimity, and I'm joined here today by Martin Decat, VP of Product at Elimity, and Jeremy Adunez, Director at Approach Cyber. So the topic of today's webinar is identity data from chaos to visibility. And the reason we chose this topic is that securing access to data and applications has become a cornerstone of any modern cybersecurity strategy, especially with regulations such as NIS2, ISO 27001, SOC 2, CMMC, and many others. However, user access governance projects have a history of incurring these multi-year rollouts and requiring highly specialized personnel, making many companies shy away and bear excessive cyber risk in the process. For those companies, approaching user access governance as a data problem can provide the answer. This approach focuses on visibility of your actual users, thereby effectively trimming down user access governance to its essentials and focusing effort on reducing cyber risk as opposed to being focused on compliance exclusively. This data-driven, risk-driven approach has the potential to let companies achieve mature access governance in a matter of days, not months. And in this context, Elimity developed a platform for this lightweight identity governance, and Approach Cyber guides companies through this effort as a dedicated cybersecurity and privacy service provider, which is why we decided to bundle our experiences in this webinar. So in the rest of this presentation, first of all, Jeremy will introduce Approach Cyber and discuss the need for identity visibility and lightweight identity governance with real-world use cases. After that, Martin will go deeper into the platform Elimity insights and the case study of how this platform was applied at a financial organization. And then we wrap this up with conclusions and, of course, Q&A. So before we take off, two administrative items. First of all, we had a lot of registrations, but some people couldn't make it in person. So we're recording this webinar, and all registrants will receive the recording afterwards. And also, if you have questions during this webinar, just let us know using the chat window, and we'll go into them during the Q&A. We'll leave plenty of time for Q&A. So with that being said, I now turn this over to Jeremy.
Thanks, Eli. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So the goal of today is to give you a bit of insights on the identity part. As Eli mentioned, we are working with Elimity on this subject. Now, my role now is to provide you a bit of information on Approach Cyber. So we are a pure player in cybersecurity and privacy. So our vision is that we believe that everyone deserves digital peace of mind. Today, we live in a world where, first of all, it goes very quick, everything evolves, but we all have been even targeted or involved in any misuse within the digital world. And therefore, we believe that everyone deserves digital peace of mind. A key element herein is everyone is deserving that, and we are also helping society in that, but not only companies, as I mentioned, it's also citizens. And in this case, we have, for instance, helped a company in Belgium to develop the full development of It's Me. So in that reasons, it helps to that everyone deserves a digital peace of mind. Our purpose in the end is to deliver cyber sovereignty to society, and we help every company to focus on their business while we take care of their cyber security. So who are we at a glance? The company exists already more than 20 years. I think it's 2016, we made a big shift towards cyber security. As I said, we are a pure player in cybersecurity and privacy. I will extend on that later on within the security and the privacy part. We are a scale up, as we call that in Belgium. We have approximately, and we just passed the 100 people within Belgium and Switzerland, and we have kind of a turnover of 11 million. We are certified ISO 27001. We also have the ISO 27701 verification, and Approach Cyber has 3 offices, one in Antwerp, one in Louvain-la-Neuve, and one in Lausanne, Switzerland. Now, what are our services? So basically, we help companies within the advisory part. So we advise them how to be stronger, how to be more secure, how to operate in this digital world. And therefore, we use quite a lot of assessments because in the end, we need to know what is happening. The topic of today is visibility, identity visibility. And whenever you perform an assessment, it's to also gain visibility. So we try to help our customers as best as we can, starting from the bottom with the assessments to know exactly what is going on. So a big part of our services are based on the advisory and the consulting part. We also have the what we call development stack, the SDLC or secure software development lifecycle. Basically, we also have what we call software factories where we can help companies to develop securely applications for their customers, for their internal use, you name it. The example I gave was It's Me. So we developed quite a lot for It's Me. And that's one of our software factories. Everything also relates on technologies. So Approach Cyber can help you with integration of technologies, integrations of security platforms, not only integration, but also maintaining the support and maintenance. And we even go towards managed security services. So every technology can also kind of, depending of how we operate, but can be delivered in a managed security service. We do have a security operations center. So we have our own security operations center within Belgium, so a local one, 24/7 possibility. So that helps. Now, if we go to our portfolio, I will not go into the details, but basically we cover it from a full point of view. And I just get a notification of someone full screen. So there we go. That should resolve the case. So the portfolio, as I said, we base ourselves on the NIS2 framework. So from assessments and audits towards the factual stuff, the visibility. So we need to know where we're going. And that's crucial for us in order to implement, inform, advise on preventive measures from a security point of view, from a CISO point of view, but also from a DPO point of view. We also help in compliance and certification paths like ISO, CMMC. And today, we also need to educate and do a lot of awareness on security. So we also guide companies within the security awareness platforms. And with that, we also have all the phishing campaigns. Now, as soon as we have roadmaps in place, strategies in place, and all the governance that has been addressed, we need to be able to implement that. So therefore, we have our technical guys within Approach Cyber, and they will go for it on application level, but also on cloud level. We have data security, we have identity security. So all this technical stuff, so the bits and the bytes, needs to be addressed, needs to be implemented, maintained in the right way. Once that's done, we can higher the maturity, we can move on toward the managed security services. We also have our emergency response capability. And as a last one, we have the recover one. So it's also good to test your recover capabilities, business continuity planning. Unfortunately, it is happening and sometimes we need to recover. So it's better to be prepared. So that's in a nutshell what we can offer as services within Approach. Now, we said it's really about visibility. So everything starts to know what is happening within the organization, what is living within the organization in terms of identities, in terms of devices, in terms of applications. We need to know what is going on. So that's very important. And if Today, we refer that to identities. You have to ask yourself the question, which identities do I have within the organization? You probably have your own account, but you might have potentially a third-party account at another company. You might have an administrator or a more privileged account within the organization. And then we also share with other people non-human identities, which are different aspects within the organization, but also are seen as identities. And all these identities provide access to something, to a platform, to an application, to anything that you might have access within the organization. Can be on-prem, can be cloud, can be directory, databases, you name it. So it's quite a lot. But ask yourself the question, how do companies manage this and how do they get the visibility? Knowing that we have different vendors, big platforms, cloud, on-prem. So it's always very tricky to make all these relationships. And Marta will go over that later on within the platform. Now, if we go into customer cases, so we help companies within the identity part. And as I said, it's really about generating and identifying the right visibility within organizations. So we need to be able to address some challenges in terms of compliance. Companies got now more and more the question for their customers who has access to our confidential or common confidential data or common critical data. But we also have regulations like CMMC, like ISO that we need to follow. Sometimes it's even mandatory. And then we need to perform some access reviews, some entitlement reviews. But today it's also a lot of manual work. And that's something that we will help together with Elimity to provide you the right visibility. On that, we have specific things like CMMC is for defense aspects. We also have for Belgium, for instance, National Bank requires also some visibility on who has access to what. So it's specific reporting that is today not available out of the box, and it's quite a lot used within Excels. They are shared and so on. So it's really lacking the right visibility, and it's not factual in the end. And that means that it's get on the long run, nobody's really taking care of it. And that's something that is in the end not feasible because it's not helping in addressing the security in the right way. Now, another customer case are the access review. So as I said earlier on, a lot of companies need to be able to do that for regulations. Even in the pharma, we do have GXP. We also have ISO again, and so on and so on. And there it's really mandatory. So you need to be able to respond to the question, who has access to what? Now, companies might use IGAs, identity governance platforms, or any other even self-developed applications in order to do these kind of access reviews. But even then, it remains a challenge because we have multiple platforms, we have on-prem, we have cloud, we cannot interconnect, we have different identities. So it's really a lot of manual work. And in the end, it's always the case that it's only selected people within the organization that is working on that aspect. When these people are leaving, it brings a lot of risks. We are completely lost, and so on and so on. So it's a very tedious process, requires a lot of time, and so on and so on. And in the end, it's a high and long-term cost, which we all want to avoid. Now, just to give you some insights on a few customer cases that we are seeing, and these customer cases are for companies that already have IGAs, but also companies that have no platform in identity or identity and access management. So it's really for companies that have lower maturity or even a bit higher maturity. We see really a lot of cases, a lot of challenges in these companies. So that being said, I will hand over to Maarten.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy, for the introduction. So what you actually said, as I think that you summarized, is that we see more and more companies that have a clear need for this control and to be able to prove that you're in control over who can access what. But the current way of working is also very manual, very costly, very time consuming. And that's really where the collaboration between Approach and Elimity comes in. Elimity provides this plug and play platform for lightweight identity governance, and Approach Cyber is then the cybersecurity leader that guides organizations through their security journey and helps apply this platform in practice. And so to dig a bit deeper into what this lightweight identity governance means, well, the goal there is to help you be in control of who can access what, and to be able to show that also to auditors or external parties and so on. And this being in control means that you know whether there are still active user accounts in your systems that belong to people that already left the company that could be misused, or that you at least know who of your employees exactly has administrator rights on critical servers, or who can access HR data or financial data or other privacy sensitive data, or that you know which employees can commit fraud by both submitting and approving contracts. And then if you know all of these things, that you can also act upon those. However, if we then put this against the focus of the IAM market, you see that the typical focus of these full stack identity governance suites, like they're called, like a SailPoint or an Armada or a Savient, is always on automating user management workflows. Like if someone enters your organization, automatically new accounts are created, and if they move, then certain accounts are added or permissions are added and removed later on, and so on. And that's all very valuable. No question about that, especially if you're a large organization. It definitely also helps with security and to build control. However, it's also very costly to set up and to maintain. So as a result, this might not be feasible for your security team, or you might opt for automating the user lifecycle for only your core systems. But in any case, if you have to show that you're in control of who can access what, and you don't want to go for the big bang of automating everything, what you definitely need is to focus on the essentials of governing user access instead. And for us, that means you should definitely have this visibility in your current users and their permissions. You should then let IT and business review and clean up these accounts and accesses, and then automatically monitor these over time. Together, this creates, well, what we call a closed loop approach. Lets you get in control and remain in control of who can access what a lot faster than if you try to automate everything from the start. And so at Elimity, we provide a platform specifically for this, meaning that it helps you collect data from your most important sources, which I mean the users, the permissions, the roles, and so on, then allow you to dig into this data and understand who can currently do what and identify risks. Then review this access, both for the core security and IAM team, but also for line managers and application owners and anyone who is responsible for a part of the organization by running access reviews. And then if you want, also collecting and tracking these changes that all of these people might see. If you see some account that shouldn't be there anymore, then turn that into a change request and integrate with an ITSM platform like ServiceNow, or even an IGA like SailPoint for the actual provisioning, and then monitor this over time later on. Now, this is a quite versatile approach. So we have customers that apply this on top of a SailPoint for improved reporting and analytics. Others use this to complement their IGA suite with visibility into disconnected applications. And others use this as a form of lightweight identity governance all by itself. And so this webinar is really on the last topic. If you're interested to see the platform on top of an IGA, let us know. We can give you extra information on that if you want as well. But so in the context of lightweight governance, this approach here really turns around the traditional deployment process of a full stack IGA with all the automation of joiner, mover, leaver workflows and building roles and so on into something that is designed for giving visibility in a matter of hours, and then identifying access risks with as little effort as possible, and reviewing, cleaning up, and monitoring afterwards. So this really pushes forward these costly and risky investments, pushes these forward in time, and lets you take control as quickly as possible. And so that's the general process of lightweight identity governance. And to show you what this process looks like in practice, let's take a look at a specific customer case. And I will illustrate as well with a demo of the platform to make it even more tangible. And so the customer case, the case study focuses on security insights. but for those of you that are interested in running access reviews as easy as possible, I will show that as well. It's a slightly different approach, but still, this really contains everything that the platform can do. So in this case, the case study was an example of a company of around 2,000 employees. They wanted to increase their internal control to decrease cyber risk and show compliance, but they had to do a lot with a small security team. They were not a big bank or something like that. And if you think back to the slides of my explanation of the use cases, this is really the lightweight governance without another IJ in place. And in that context, the standard way of working that approach cyber and Elimity advice works in 5 phases. First, you work towards visibility as quickly as possible, meaning that you at least understand who can currently access what as quickly as possible. Then you start investigating risk and cleaning this up. But in the first phase, you do this as quickly as possible, a bit quick and dirty, probably with some exports and imports. But in the meantime of the investigation, you also set up continuous data collection. And then afterwards, once you have that up-to-date data, you also start including line managers and application owners in the cleanup. So you expand the scope of the people involved. And finally, you mature towards more continuous monitoring. So first you focus on the cleanup of your current situation. And once you reach a certain level of maturity, then you use the platform for continuous monitoring, continuous governance with regular reviews, and so on. And so all of this is done based on the platform called Elimity Insights, which looks like this. So what you see here is a demo environment of Elimity Insights with, 11, 12 sources included. And important is nothing of what I'll show you here is hard coded. So this means that we always try to work with the customer and try to prioritize the top 5 to 10 applications from a security point of view. And those are the ones that you will first connect to the platform. And you try to build towards a data foundation that then shows you a continuously updated data foundation, by the way, that shows you who can currently access what. And typically the sources that would be included are things like Active Directory, where you then get visibility into users and groups and computers, or Azure AD, which is a bit similar, but also service principals and app registrations. And then it kind of depends on where you put your focus. Might be that you want to take control of Windows file shares and who has access to that, or a SharePoint environment, database admins, a development tool like GitHub, or even a cloud environment like Azure or Google Cloud. It depends on the priorities. And then what we almost always advise as well is to include the HR system too, and then link back all of these accounts to the HR record so that you get a data foundation where you see the actual person. So that means the actual employee with all of the metadata, and then link that to all of the different users in the different and accounts and groups and so on in the different parts of in the other sources, in the different parts of your IT environment. And so important here is that this is not an IGA tool, so this is reporting only. But the benefit of that is we're a SailPoint. We're not a SailPoint. We're an analytics tool, meaning that it's very easy to include sources that typically do not fit in an IGA tool like a SailPoint. Typically, what you don't include there is stuff like Windows file shares or SharePoint or these more data-driven tools, unstructured data that doesn't really fit in the IGA way of working. Definitely take it up here, and then you build towards your complete data foundation. And so the way that we typically work towards this is by combining or setting up sources, it's called in our case. A source is a definition of a system for which you bring in the data. We have a library of out-of-the-box connectors for the usual suspects like Active Directory and Azure and so on. For those, it's really just configuring a read-only user or an app registration in Azure, and then the data is automatically fetched. But all of the customers that we work with are complex organizations. They all have stuff that we haven't heard about. So you can also define a custom source and then open up the API to get the data into the platform as quickly and as easily as possible. And in the first phases, you would even work by just letting someone take an export of a system like SQL admins and then import to to a CSV, and then later on just take the effort of building towards continuous data foundation. And that's really the effort that I meant for the first feasibility here. And then once you have that feasibility, you can start digging into the data. And I'll quickly show you some examples of how the platform, of what the platform can support. But the essence is that you'll see me do some of these queries manually, but the essence is that you work towards this overview of your most important controls as quickly as possible, for which we, by the way, also provide this KRI guide, we call it internally, with some key categories of risk indicators around identity and access management. So stuff like orphaned accounts and privileged accounts and identity hygiene, data quality, segregation of duty, and so on. And so you can dig into the data manually, but if there's a control that is interesting to you, then definitely store it. And from that point on, you will be able to track this over time. You have the most important results, or the most recent results here a few clicks away. And this is how you really show that you're in control of your entire landscape. But so to first give you some examples of stuff that you could do with this platform. Imagine that you just started working with Elimity Insights, you're part of a security team, and you want to know, well, how well are we performing in general? And typically something that people will immediately do is, well, you have all the employees here, and again, nothing here is hard-coded. This is a data set from SAP HR, if I'm not mistaken, but if you use another system, you would see something slightly different. But probably you will have an attribute like status, and let's say you group by status, and let's zoom into the retired employees. And let's take a look whether any of these don't have access anymore that they shouldn't have. As an example, let's add the column of the linked Windows file share resources. So count and overview, I will add like that. And then you quickly see, well, most of these retired employees don't have access anymore to a Windows file share. But if we then reverse the sorting, apparently there is this one guy, this Frank Olalu, that still can access 392 different resources apparently. And that's probably something that you want to go deeper into, and then see what sources are these, what files and folders are these exactly, and should we remove this over time, because this is a risk. And so you see me do this in a couple of clicks, but I do want to highlight here that behind the scenes, a lot of magic is really going on to give you this overview, because there is no direct link between an employee and a Windows file share in your IT infrastructure. What has actually happened is we imported the HR system, we linked it to Active Directory, I think, for example, based on a shared employee ID or something. Then this Active Directory user or group can refer to a Windows file share principal, which in essence, by the way, is just a very technical, low-level, long number. But those things then give permissions to resources, being the files and the folders that you have. And so behind the scenes, if you just ask for this overview, then this column is added, and you immediately see, well, this is the amount of resources that's calculated across these different links. And that's really where the power of this platform shines, because behind the scenes, a lot of manual effort that would have taken a lot of time in Excel is done just automatically for you. So I can give hundreds, if you want, of these examples of these queries, maybe to just give you one other example, maybe around the orphaned accounts. There are many variations of orphaned accounts. Things that people might immediately do, or typically immediately do, is in Active Directory you have this last logon attribute, which is a very interesting one if you have Active Directory. So just by quickly sorting on that, you immediately see, well, apparently there are accounts here that haven't logged in over 10 years. So why are they still there? Are they still enabled, actually? So let's do group by enabled and zoom in on everything that is still enabled. Well, in this data set, everything is enabled. So apparently these are enabled accounts that haven't logged in more than 10 years. You could look at the password expired, and then clearly this is a risk. These things are the ones that you should definitely remove from your IT infrastructure, because this is just waiting to be misused by an attacker. And to give you one more final and more elaborate example that goes across sources. So all of this is really done in the data tables, which we often refer to as Excel on steroids. But if you want to go beyond that, You might want to do something like, let's find all Active Directory users for which condition enabled is still true, like that, but it's still linked to an employee, Workday employee, for which you see that the status is not active anymore. Let's do that. So attribute of employee, status does not equal active anymore. And these are all accounts that are still enabled, but apparently they're linked to someone that already left your company. Clearly, this is also a security control that you want the result to be 0. In this data set, the result is very bad. I hope it's not as bad in your case, but clearly this is something that you want to track, that you want to store and then monitor over time in these stored queries that I've shown you before. So that's really the basics of this visibility that Jeremy talked about. And so the next step, well, if you go back to this slide here, this is really the first step where you build this visibility. Once you have this knowledge, this visibility again, then you can start investigating. You can start cleaning this up, meaning that you can go into these stored queries, into your controls, and for example, if there are AD accounts not logged in for 6 months, go into the details, see whether they are still needed, and if not, then act upon that. And with that act upon that, I mean that in this case, this is a read-only system, so we do not do automated provisioning. We will not automatically remove any of these accounts that you see. But if you want, you can indicate here that something has to be changed. So for example, you can request the removal of this Active Directory user. Or if you want, then if you don't want it to be removed completely, then request request the enabled to be changed to false. So that's an attribute change. Or request the groups to remove. All of those things definitely indicated here in the platform. And from that point on, those will be listed as what we call change requests. And if the data is then refreshed, misclicked, so change request. If the data is then refreshed, automatically the platform will monitor the status of these change requests. And if someone, for example, requested that a group be removed or be revoked or an account be disabled, something like that, and if it's actually not there anymore, if it's actually disabled, then this here is automatically turned to resolved. And this really is the last cornerstone of the closed loop of governance, because you can now show to an auditor or in your security team that you have visibility, you understand who can currently access what, you have an overview of your most important risks with these stored queries or these stored controls. You have acted upon it, so you indicated that some of these things should be changed, and you have the audit proof that it actually has been changed. And that's a very powerful combo. So again, to come back to this slide here, this really is done in a couple of days. In this specific case, I think after 7 days, we had 5 sources linked to that, and they had between 50 and 60 of these controls in there, and they were actively working on this data to clean this up further. So that's really what we want to achieve with this lightweight governance platform. Now, last thing, of course, it might be that your security team itself does not know everything. So if you're a decently sized company, then these 10 people don't know everything anymore, and you have to include someone else in the governance process. And that's why we saw that some of our customers were downloading data from this data foundation and then cutting it into pieces in Excel and then manually sending it over to line managers, team leaders, to application owners. Clearly, that's like Jeremy said, that's a very tedious process, and we want to do better. So the platform also allows you to do access reviews on top of this data foundation, meaning that you can ask input from others and ask whether, for example, the AD groups of the people in their team are still correct, or the accounts for people in their team are still correct. And you can do this in campaigns, which I'll show you in a minute. So, for example, run a campaign for all the team leaders that you have in your company, and then ask them to all review the people in their custody, and then you can track and who has completed this, and automated reminders will be sent out and so on. But just for the sake of example, I will create an access review manually, which you can also do. So for example, let's look at the AD groups of the people of a specific cost center. I have these 25 people here, 25 people of cost center 001. Let me add the column of the linked groups. And what you then immediately see is, well, these are the groups, but what I'm actually looking for is this small button here. And you then, in a few clicks, have an overview like this. Yeah, it's loading for a moment. Typically, it's there after 2 seconds. So what you will see here is an overview of the 25 people that we had here, and there, I think, in the 50 or 70 different AD groups. Not sure what is working. Okay, there we go. 76 different AD groups apparently, and the distribution is something that looks like this. This is interesting for many reasons. So I was working towards an access review, but if you're looking at a role designer, you will typically look at the commonalities and look at what you should put in a role for this specific cost center. If you look on the right of this picture, this is something that we see at every customer, then this is the case that people are just given more and more permissions when they move throughout the organization. And at some point now they can do a lot more than their direct colleagues. So it's definitely worth a question why this Aurelie Quantum is the only one that can do these things or has these permissions in the team, while you would expect that everyone could do a bit the same. So that's two different usages of this view, but you can also use this to send it out as an access review. So let's add it to the quarterly access review here. I'll just send it to myself for the sake of a demo. I will now receive an email. Just to speed things up, let's use the link directly. And in this case, we wanted to go for something as business friendly and as human friendly as possible. So the question is always two steps. So first, this is the list of all the people that are currently assigned to this cost center. So imagine I see a test user here. This really shouldn't be there anymore. Remove unneeded test user. So this account should be removed as a whole. And then as a next step, you get an overview of also the AD groups of these people. And then you see the patterns. As a human, you see some patterns here. Imagine that everyone should always have this one. So add these. But definitely no one should have this download group here. So let's remove that one. And why? Security critical. Please remove. Confirm. Get an overview, and you submit. And that's really that's the scope view. So you don't present line managers and application owners with all of the data that you have in the platform, but you ask them a specific question about their scope in the application. And then here again, you're building audit proof, because now this access review used to be open, but if I refresh, you see that it's now completed. And again, all of these changes that have been submitted, so now not done in this view, but done by someone in an access review, they are now changed into the same change requests that you saw before. So you can act upon that, can integrate that with your ITSM. And if you've actually done the work, then again, you will be able to show that you've actually reached out to these people. They have filled out their access review. So that's very important compliance evidence, but also you will have the evidence to show that you've acted upon the changes that they requested. And that's really the last part of this approach, where you have this continuous monitoring and governance. So you can use these access reviews in step 4 in this slide to include line managers and application owners in the cleanup phase. But then once you get to a decent maturity, then definitely keep on using this by doing continuous monitoring, continuous governance, and regularly, periodically sending out these access reviews to keep everyone's permissions at least privilege over time. And so that's an overview of the platform and the essentials of user access governance. So I've talked about having visibility, being able to identify risk, reviewing this risk by the access reviews or directly in the platform, and then monitoring over time and tracking the necessary changes. All of that as a complete version of governance, but clearly at a much lower cost than rolling out a full stack IGA, which makes this a very good approach for companies that do not have an IGA yet, like SailPoint, or that want to complement their existing IGA. So that's everything that we wanted to share in this webinar. We've discussed the need for this lightweight governance and a bit of the full IGA versus lightweight, and then a demo and a case study of how Approach and Elimity implemented this in practice. So by the way, to get you started, even if you don't use Elimity inside, then definitely take a look at our website. There are lots of interesting resources there. Know that Approach and Elimity together can help you on this topic. And if there are questions right now, then definitely we have some time to go deeper into those. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Jeremy, for this presentation on why identity data governance and visibility have in fact become a critical component of IAM strategy for many companies. And hopefully everyone on this webinar has now a good sense, a good grasp of how easy it becomes to achieve critical insights into IAM data if this data is linked across different sources, and then you can do simple queries to catch all the outliers and potential violations. With that said, by the way, related to that, automation is a key objective for many organizations, and of course, understanding your data is so critical before you start automating, right? So today on this call, we have experts from various companies. Feel free to add your questions. We already received a few, but if you want to add some, feel free to do so now. I'll start with the question we got, and I'll throw it over to Martin. Isn't Elimity just a one-off?
That's an interesting view. Well, you can definitely see it as a one-off exercise. So we've done that a couple of times, and I think it also fits in what Jeremy called the assessment. So where you want this quick visibility, the platform definitely allows you to do that. So then you would use maybe a direct connection to a built-in source like Active Directory, but for the rest you would use CSV exports and imports to really get to that first visibility quickly, which is very similar to how we operate in general as well, as I presented. But the experience does teach us that the real value that this project, this platform, and the project around it only really starts living, and you only see real value come up when you have this updated view over time, so that you see that you're actually working, that you're improving, what the changes were that you've done last week. And if you then have to repeat this every 2 months, I've seen a company try that. That's just a hassle. You will definitely not do that every week or every day. So by all means, go for automation, go for continuous visibility for those, especially for those systems that are included out of the box, because it's the same effort. So in that case, I wouldn't advise the one-off.
Makes sense. Just to add to that, from experience, having seen organizations try to approach this from a snapshot point of view, it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of manual effort, and it's not working in the long term. So anything to add, Jeremy?
Yeah, in the end, security is not about it's not a one-time project. It's something we have to do on the long run. It's a daily task. As Marta said, it's key to have the visibility to start, but in the end, we need to fit it in a big program and to do it continuously. And measuring is very important. Monitoring is very important. So we need to keep it up to date to be able to track the changes, because everything evolves. And by that, being said, we need to do that on a daily basis. So we can start with a one-off, absolutely, but on the longer run, we need to automate as much as we can, and we need to have that visibility day in, day out.
Yeah,
perfect.
I agree.
Yep. Okay. And then another question, very specific to a part of a presentation that we did that relates to access reviews. And so the question is, how do these access reviews, which we've shown, relate to the access reviews which you can do in Azure AD?
Yeah, good question as well. And in the end, I can use that even from my role in the sales department. I also get the access reviews or entitlement reviews of the sales department at Approach Cyber, and it is working quite well in Azure. So I can easily select, I can easily see who has access to our drive. But I just said it, it's only our drive. And even in sales, we have our drive, we have our Salesforce, we have our mailing campaign tool, and so on. So we have a lot of platforms where we have different tools. And it's good to start with a drive, but it would be even better if we can see it as a whole. And that would make my life easier, would make life easier of everyone within the company that need to perform these entitlement reviews, because if you get that, yeah, nobody's going through the list. I think we all agree that if you get an Excel or a long list of rows, well, you will only focus on the first 25, and below 26, it's less focus, I would say. So if you can see it as a whole with a lot of help, yeah, it makes life so much easier. And as Marta said, you can also automate. We will be able to use also AI and so on. So only the outliers which requires attention, that's what you want to see as an approver. And that really helps. Now, to respond to the question, yes, Azure is doing well. It provides you the visibility on the specific parts of Azure or on Drive within the Windows environment. But it's only limited to that. So if you could combine it with a unique ID, it makes a lot more sense. And that's exactly what we are looking for, is to have that visibility as a whole. That makes life easier for everyone. And also to an auditor, imagine just press the button, export, and you can present the evidence. Yeah, it's just a lot easier to work.
Yeah, and maybe to add that, so perfect answer, Jeremy. A very cool pattern that we see in practice as well is Azure AD for the. It's commonly used at an organization for the core system. So it is typically one of the core systems of an organization. It also provides some fundamental basic life cycle, so automation support, automating from HR to Azure AD or from Azure AD to other systems over SCIM, for example. So you could use that system as your IGA, as I described it. So for the automation of the lifecycle for some core systems that integrate with Azure AD, and then also use Elimity Insights for the full visibility and the governance on still disconnected applications. And that might actually be a very good, pragmatic approach where at least you automate the user lifecycle for those systems that are used by many of your team, of your company's people, and you want the operational benefit of that, but you still have visibility and the governance across your entire landscape. That's a cool pattern that we saw arising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And we do see a lot of interest towards access reviews, because I think organizations at large are getting a little tired of trying to get certifications on access for everything from everybody and all the time. And so targeted certifications have become a very important component of strategy of shifting the focus of an organization from compliance to risk. So with that said, that's all the questions we had today. And I want to thank everyone who's joined this webinar. Like we said in the beginning, the recording will be provided later, so you can then share that with your colleagues. But if you have any other questions that come up after, please feel free to reach out directly to Jeremy, to Martin, myself. We'll be happy to provide additional context, share use cases as relevant. And again, thank you for dialing in and joining us today.
Yeah.
Thank you. Exactly. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Marta.
Right. See you next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you next
Bye-bye.
time. Bye-bye.